The worst part about crying in public on Christmas Eve wasn't the stares. It was knowing you'd become exactly the kind of sad, pathetic scene people would whisper about later over eggnog. Sarah Bennett sat alone in the corner booth of Romano's Italian bistro, mascara pooling beneath her eyes, staring at the empty chair across from her where Mark Henderson should have been sitting. Should have been, but wasn't, because 20 minutes ago, he'd taken one look at her. Really looked. The way you assess a used car you're not sure you want to buy, smiled politely, and said he'd just remembered an urgent work emergency on Christmas Eve at 7 p.m. She wasn't stupid. She knew what that smile meant, what that excuse translated to. She'd seen it in his eyes the moment he'd approached her table. That flicker of disappointment quickly masked by courtesy, whatever version of her existed. In their carefully curated text, exchanges over the past 2 weeks hadn't matched the reality standing before. Him in a green dress she'd bought specifically for tonight, hopeful and nervous and apparently not quite good enough. The waiter had witnessed the whole thing. Now he hovered nearby with practiced invisibility, probably wondering whether to bring the check or let her keep occupying the booth, while tears dripped onto the breadbasket. Sarah wanted to leave, wanted to run to her car and drive home and pretend this evening had never happened. But her legs felt weighted to the floor, and some stubborn part of her refused to slink away like she'd done something wrong. So she sat there, trapped between humiliation and defiance, watching couples around her laugh over wine and candlelight while Christmas music played overhead like a cruel soundtrack to her failure. "Excuse me?" The small voice cut through Sarah's spiral. She looked up to find a little girl standing beside her table, maybe 7 years old, with dark curls escaping from beneath a knitted hat and enormous brown eyes that held an unsettling amount of wisdom for someone so young. Behind her stood a woman in her early 30s, wearing a server's apron from the diner next door, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "I'm so sorry," the woman said quickly, reaching for the child's shoulder. "Mia, we can't bother people while they're eating." "But she's not eating," Mia said with the brutal honesty only children possess. "She's sad and alone, and it's Christmas Eve." She turned those big eyes back to Sarah. "Can we join you?" Sarah blinked, completely unprepared for this interaction. What? My mama just finished her shift," Mia explained, as if this clarified everything. "We were going to get burgers at the counter, but all the seats are taken. And you have this whole big table, and that chair is empty." She pointed to the seat Mark had vacated. "And you look like you could use some company." "Mia!" Her mother's cheeks flushed red. We can't just invite ourselves." "Why not?" Mia asked with genuine confusion. "Teacher says Christmas is about sharing and being kind to people who are hurting." "She's hurting, I can tell." Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been holding back a flood. This strange, perceptive child saw her, really saw her, in a way Mark Henderson never had. Saw past the dress and the makeup to the hurt underneath, and instead of turning away, had walked directly toward it. "You know what?" Sarah heard herself say, her voice rough but steady. "I would really like some company, actually." She gestured to the empty seats. "Please join me." The relief on the mother's face was immediate and overwhelming. "Are you sure?" "We don't want to impose." "You're not imposing." "I'm inviting." Sarah smiled, and felt it reach her eyes for the first time all evening. "I'm Sarah." "Elena," the woman said, sliding into the booth with visible gratitude. "And this is my daughter, Mia, the world's youngest social coordinator, apparently." Mia beamed as she climbed in beside her mother. "I'm 7 3/4. That's almost 8. What followed was the strangest, most unexpectedly lovely dinner Sarah had experienced in years. Elena tried to order modestly, just burgers for her and Mia, but Sarah waved her off and ordered enough food for a small army: pasta, salad, the restaurant's famous garlic bread, tiramisu for dessert. If she was going to have dinner companions on the night she'd been stood up, she was going to do it right. As they ate, the story emerged in pieces. Elena worked 2 jobs: the diner during the day, cleaning offices at night ever since her husband had walked out 18 months ago. Tonight, she'd picked up an extra shift because holiday pay was double, which meant she could finally afford to buy Mia the art supplies she'd been begging for. But it also meant no time to cook, no decorated tree at home, no money left over for the kind of Christmas dinner other families would be having tomorrow. It's okay, though, Elena said, her smile tired but genuine. We have each other. That's what matters. Mia nodded seriously. Mama says people are more important than stuff, and that hard times don't last forever. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Here was this woman working herself to exhaustion, and she was comforting her daughter with hope and wisdom while Sarah had spent the last hour wallowing, because some guy she barely knew had decided she wasn't worth his time. The contrast was humbling. Your mama is very smart, Sarah said to Mia. Those are true things. As the meal went on, something shifted. Mia told elaborate stories about her classmates and her favorite books, her hands dancing through the air as she described the dragon she was drawing in art class. Elena's shoulders gradually relaxed, the tension draining away as she ate real food and sat in a warm restaurant instead of rushing between obligations. And Sarah found herself laughing, genuinely laughing at Mia's commentary and Elena's dry observations about difficult customers. She also found herself thinking about the successful marketing career that left her feeling empty, about the parade of dating app matches that never went anywhere, about how long it had been since she'd connected with anyone the way she was, connecting with these two strangers over pasta and breadsticks. Her life looked impressive on paper. Good job, nice apartment, plenty of acquaintances. But somewhere along the way, she'd confused achievement with fulfillment. She'd been so busy chasing what she thought she should want that she'd forgotten to ask what she actually needed. When the check came, Sarah paid it before Elena could even reach for her purse. But she didn't stop there. Something had crystallized in her mind over the course of the evening, a clarity she hadn't felt in months. Elena, she said carefully, what time do you start your cleaning shift? Elena checked her phone. 9, I've got about 40 minutes. And tomorrow? Christmas Day? Both jobs, unfortunately. The diner's doing a special holiday service, and the office building wants everything spotless before people return next week. She shrugged like it was inevitable. It's good money. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed quickly. What if you didn't go? What if you stayed home with Mia tomorrow? Opened presents, watched movies, actually had a Christmas? Elena's laugh was hollow. That's a beautiful thought, but I can't afford to turn down. What if someone covered what you would have made? Both shifts. Sarah looked up, meeting Elena's shocked eyes. What if someone wanted to give you the gift of a day off? A real Christmas with your daughter? Elena stared at her. You can't, that's too much. Actually, I can. And I want to. Sarah surprised herself with how much she meant it. I was supposed to be on a date tonight with someone who couldn't be bothered to stick around for appetizers. Instead, I got to have dinner with 2 incredible people who reminded me what actually matters. That's worth more than whatever I'm going to give you, trust me. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mia piped up. She looked at Sarah with those wise, ancient eyes. She needs to say yes, right? Right, Sarah agreed. She really, really does. Elena covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. When she nodded, the tears spilled over, but she was smiling. Okay, yes, thank you. I can't even... Thank you. They exchanged numbers. Sarah transferred money that would cover Elena's shifts and then some, enough for a proper Christmas dinner. For those art supplies, for something approaching breathing room. When they finally stood to leave, Mia threw her arms around Sarah's waist in a fierce hug. You're my Christmas miracle, the little girl whispered. Sarah knelt down to her level, her own eyes stinging. No, sweetie, you're mine. You saw someone who needed kindness and you weren't afraid to offer it. Don't ever lose that. As she watched Elena and Mia walk out into the snowy night, hand in hand, Sarah felt something settle in her chest. The ache of Mark's rejection was still there, but it felt smaller now, insignificant compared to the warmth spreading through her. She'd spent so long seeking validation from people who didn't matter, measuring her worth by whether strangers on apps found her attractive enough, successful enough, interesting enough. But worth wasn't something external. It was what you did when no one was watching, how you treated people who couldn't do anything for you in return, the kindness you put into the world when your own heart was breaking. She walked to her car through the falling snow, and for the first time in a long time, She didn't feel alone. She felt connected to something larger than herself, to the struggling single mother who refused to let circumstances steal her hope, to the little girl brave enough to approach a crying stranger, to every person out there fighting battles she knew nothing about. Mark Henderson had done her a favor tonight, though he'd never know it. His rejection had cracked her open just enough to let something real in, something that mattered. Sarah drove home through the quiet streets, past houses glowing with Christmas lights, and smiled. Tomorrow she'd wake up and reassess everything: her job, her priorities, what she actually wanted from her life. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, she'd been rejected and humiliated and then given the greatest gift she'd received in years: a reminder of her own humanity. Sometimes the worst moments crack you open, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, a little girl with wise eyes shows up to remind you that broken things can still hold light, that being alone isn't the same as being lonely, and that the best connections often happen when you're brave enough to be seen in your most vulnerable moments. Mascara running and all. Merry Christmas, Sarah thought as she pulled into her driveway. To second chances, to unexpected kindness, to all of us just trying to find our way home.